Tonight's special needs planning Beyond the Nest presentation is being held by Three Birds, One Mission, a partnership between Bluebird Day, IS Landing, and Maryland Day Academy. Together, these three organizations are dedicated to empowering children and families through innovative therapy and education and support, helping kids of all abilities reach their full potential. Just to let you know a little bit about our Three Birds, one of which is IS Landing, which was established in 2007 and serves children from birth to 21 years old, offering a wide range of therapy services, including occupational, physical therapy, speech, mental health, and ABA therapies. Located in Chicago's West Loop, IS Landing is known for its individualized approach, helping children and families achieve their unique goals. We also work with kids in ER. Bluebird Day was established in 2014 and offers therapeutic preschool and kindergarten programs for children ages 2 to 7, blending therapy and early education to build foundational skills kids need to thrive. Children get daily ABA, speech, OT, physical and social work therapies, and you could choose to do ABA or non-ABA tracks depending on your preference. With locations in the Chicago's West Loop and North Center. We also have a location in Wheaton, and we started Bluebird in 2014. Bluebird Day provides a nurturing environment that fosters confidence, independence, and growth. Maryland Day Academy was established in 2024 as a therapeutic day school for children's ages 6 through 14, providing a supportive and structured environment that students can grow academically, socially, and emotionally. Located in the Avondale neighborhood in Chicago, Maryland Day Academy is designed to meet the needs of children who benefit from a more personalized and therapeutic approach to education. Maryland Day is ISB approved. Together, these three organizations form Three Birds, One Mission, working hand in hand to help children and families soar. To learn more about our services and how we're making a difference, visit threebirds1mission.com. Tonight, we have for you our latest Beyond the Nest presentation, a series we started in 2020 to help educate caregivers and fellow therapists on topics that are relevant and of interest to our community. Our Beyond the Nest series has evolved over the years to include more than 35 trainings, recordings of which are available on our website and our YouTube channel. Now let's get started with tonight's presentation. Guest speaker is Kate Schye, a partner at Clancy Associates. We'll discuss everything families need to know about special needs planning, including decision-making, government benefits, special needs trusts, estate planning for parents, and much more. Please leave all questions for the end of the presentation. And Kate, take it away.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here tonight. I'm going to share my screen with you here. Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I had the opportunity to visit Bluebird Day School location in Wheaton, and I was so impressed by the individual therapy program and how that was embedded in like a preschool kindergarten setting. I remember driving my son all over the place to 4 or 5 different therapies when he was that age, and it would have been so nice to have it all under one roof like it does at Bluebird. My name is Kate Schye, and I'm a partner at Clancy Associates. I have been Clancy Associates is a full-service special needs planning law firm. I've been practicing for almost 20 years now. A little bit about me, I started my career in family law, where I counseled families at some of their most challenging times during their divorce. I then had my own children. I'll move the slide here so you can see. Let's see. Oh, there they are. I have 3 kids. I have a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. My career took a little bit of a turn when my youngest son was diagnosed with autism when he was 4. As I'm sure many of you parents are familiar with, when he was initially diagnosed, I dove headfirst, and all my time was spent researching therapies, finding ABA therapists, dealing with insurance, dealing with the school district, all to make sure that I was doing everything possible to support my son. I ended up finding Clancy Associates, and I knew this is where I wanted to practice. I knew that as a parent, when my son was diagnosed, I wanted to know what my son's path looked like in the future. I knew it would look a little bit different than my girls, but I wanted a plan. And that's my goal when families come into my office. I feel like the best part of my job is when families come in and they are very overwhelmed. They feel like a lot is coming at them. There's so much information. They just want a plan. And I feel like after we meet, they walk out with a game plan. And there's a little bit of peace of mind knowing that they at least have some action items and some steps to take to try to see what their child's individual path looks like. So that's kind of our mission. You can see on the slide there, our mission is to eliminate the confusion and stress that families feel when planning for their child's future. And we do this by serving as your guide through the legal system. Whenever I speak, I like to start out with some common parent questions. I feel like these are the questions I get a lot. What government benefits will my child be eligible for? When should I apply for these? And how do I prepare for that process? How do I protect the assets and the benefits that I have for my child? How do I build a secure plan for my child's care when I'm gone? How do I identify the right people or team to manage my child's care when I'm gone? How will that person know what my child needs? And this is the one I hear most often. I am so overwhelmed and I don't know where to start. So, what are my next steps? So, my goal for tonight is to give you information so you have a little bit of peace of mind and you can focus on your next steps. I'm also going to give you some action items. So, no matter the age of your child or where you are in the planning, whether at the beginning or whether you've done some planning already, I can give you some action items that you can do now that you can work towards a plan. So, in this presentation, I'm going to be discussing some of the bigger topics in special needs planning. First, I'll do an overview of government benefits. And then we'll talk about special needs trusts, kind of why people have them, what they're for and what they do, and how they fit into your overall estate plan. I'll talk about some decision-making tools such as guardianship and powers of attorney. And then we'll have some action items. So no matter what age your child is or where you are in the planning process, some things that you can do now. And then obviously we'll have time for questions. I also wanted to add, if you have questions that are a little bit more of a personal nature or we run out of time, I'm going to give you my email, the last slide. And so please email me and I'm happy to respond that way as well. So the first area I'm going to talk about tonight is government benefits. And I like to start presentations by giving just a brief overview of these benefits, as it's really one of the main reasons for doing this type of planning. There are 4 types of government benefits, and generally children may become eligible for these when they turn 18. However, it's really important to know in general what these benefits are, how they build on each other, and what the requirements are so you can prepare for that successful application when it comes time to apply for your child. So this slide is a very brief description of each of these 4 benefits. And as you can see, the eligibility for these generally begins at age 18. So the first benefit is supplemental security income, commonly known as SSI. This is a monthly cash benefit. In 2025, it's $967 a month. It usually goes up by a couple percentage points each year. The second benefit is Medicaid. Most people know Medicaid as health insurance. It covers some prescription drugs, possibly some co-pays. What a lot of parents don't realize is that Medicaid provides funding for adults with developmental disabilities, long-term supports, residential programs, day programs, home-based waiver programs. This Medicaid becomes more important as your son or daughter gets older. I'll provide more detail on SSI and Medicaid in the next slide. The third benefit, Social Security Disability Income, which is commonly known as SSDI. This is a benefit for those who are working, even on a very minimum basis, or have a parent who receives Social Security when they retire or has passed away. And finally, the last benefit is Medicare. And most people know what Medicare is. It's health insurance, hospital and medical coverage, and prescription drugs. So when I have clients come in to see me, the two benefits that the majority of these clients apply for when their child with a developmental disability turns 18 is SSI and Medicaid. As you know, you can be eligible at age 18. It is that monthly cash benefit, and there's two big requirements. One, they have to qualify as having a disability. The second one, they have to have less than $2,000 or $2,000 in assets in their name. I also wanted to mention that there is a 3-year look back period for SSI. So that's why it's good to kind of prepare ahead of time, because if you apply for SSI when your child is 18, Social Security will look back 3 years. So when they're 15 to see if they have more than $2,000 in their name. If your child is approved for SSI, they will automatically be approved for Medicaid. It's two separate applications, but it's automatic approval. And Medicaid, in addition to the health insurance and prescription drugs, that provides the funding for day programs, for job training, for job coaching, personal service workers, the home-based waiver program. It also provides funding for residential programs and housing. Medicaid really provides those long-term supports, which is why it becomes so important to make sure that your child stays under that $2,000 asset limitation. These application processes, as you can imagine, with Social Security can be long. Right now, it takes about 10 to 12 months. But the good thing is when you apply, so if you apply when your child is 18, say if you apply in January and you're not approved until the following November, you will get back pay from the date that you applied. I just also wanted to point out that for Medicaid, there is a 5-year look back period. So DHS will look back and make sure that your son or daughter didn't have assets of more than $2,000 in their name 5 years prior to applying. So that's where this planning obviously becomes important. So a little bit more about Medicaid. Illinois has a waiting list for those services for adults with developmental disabilities. So the day programs, the job coaching, the vocational training, all of that has a waiting list because Illinois does not have enough funding to provide services to all the adults that need them. So the PUNS list is a database of people who have a developmental disability and they're waiting to receive services which are funded by Medicaid. As I said before, these services can include residential living and job coaches, day programs, transportation, and much more. This is kind of one of those action items I was talking about. Register your child now. The waiting time doesn't start until they turn 18. However, you have all of the records available now. You have IEPs, you have neuropsych testing, you have psychological testing. It's one less thing that you'll have to do when your son or daughter gets closer to 18. Register on the PUNS list now. It's pretty easy. I just did it for my son a year ago because I tell clients that it's pretty simple, but I figured I had to do it myself to make sure it was pretty straightforward, and it is. And then each year you just have to re-verify the information and you can forget about it. But I think it's a great action item to do now, no matter the age of your child. Okay, so remember that first slide that had SSI and Medicaid on it. So there's two big requirements. One is that financial requirement, confirming that your child doesn't own more than $2,000 in assets in his or her name. The big one is, does your child have evidence to meet Social Security's definition of a disability? My son has autism, but that's not enough for the definition for Social Security's definition of disability. Per Social Security, a disability is an impairment that severely limits the ability to engage in substantial gainful activity. That basically means that they're looking at your son or daughter's ability to work. Can they maintain a full-time job? And their definition of a full-time job is earning right now around $19,440. If they can earn that, they don't qualify. So the big thing is they will look at evidence of your son or daughter's ability to work. And what does that mean? What obstacles do we see families when they come into our office and say we were denied or we have to appeal, or do we have enough evidence for our SSI application? Here's what we usually see. So not enough recent evidence, and this is a big one. This is the importance of applying for SSI and Medicaid when your son or daughter turns 18, because you have all of that recent evidence at your fingertips. Um, you have IEPs, you have psychological testing, you maybe have IQ tests, you have speech and language assessments. You have all of that testing that has been done throughout their educational career that you can submit with your application. We have some families come in when their son or daughters are in their, mid 20s or 30s, and it's definitely not impossible. It's just much harder because you have to get more testing. You have to pay out of pocket to get a new neuropsych. And when they're in school, you have that testing readily available. Another thing that I like to point out is whenever there is testing that's offered through the school, like when you have your triennial IEPs, if they offer IQ testing or any kind of motor skills, behavioral, emotional assessments, speech and language assessments, always say yes. Say yes to the testing, because that is one more test and more results that go into the IEP. The more detail in there, the better. I think, a lot of times these IEPs are very well-meaning. They appear very strength-based, which is great. I know when I go into an IEP meeting, I love hearing about how well my son is doing and how much they love him and how personable he is and how great he is to teach and all of that. But the most important thing I tell parents now especially when they have younger kids, is make sure that that IEP reflects the support that your son or daughter is getting day to day. Do they have a shared aid? Do they have support in the classroom? Do they have sensory breaks? I remember when I get that IEP before the meeting, I always go through the accommodations and I make sure that every accommodation that I know that my son's teacher gives him is in that IEP. He has movement breaks every day. He has headphones. He has the option to go to a sensory room. These aren't major things, and the teacher does them all the time, but I want that in the IEP so it's reflected the actual supports that he gets every day. That is so important. You just want to make sure that it's accurate and it paints a picture of the support that your son or daughter actually needs. Um, and you want to make sure this is not just important for benefits. Obviously, it is when you apply, but this is really important for their educational path. So I know that by making sure my son's IEP is accurate now, that's going to set him up better for next year. It's going to set him up better for junior high, for high school, because all of those supports, it's like a trail and it keeps following him. So it's just really important in general to make sure that that's accurate. Okay. These are other tips to collaborate with your IEP team. Once your son or daughter gets into high school, and if they have an intellectual disability, request an adult measure IQ test. If you have that in the IEP, that is great for your application for benefits. You don't have to pay for pay for a private adult scale IQ test. Course of study is a big one. Make sure that those classes reflect exactly what the classes are. I've seen a lot of IEPs where it says, biology earning an A, but then it's not noted that it's a co-taught classroom or it's a special education classroom. It's very hard to tell. You just want to make sure that, again, the classes are accurate. Instead of just algebra 2 or chemistry, is that a special education class? Is that a co-taught class? And accurately reflect support. If there's aides or peers, if you're at an IEP meeting, sometimes functional assessments can be helpful as well. And sometimes these trial work scenarios, I think these more come into play when kids are in high school, because Social Security is looking at these kids' ability to work. Sometimes these trial work experiences can be great evidence in the IEP. I had a client come in the other day where their son was the errand runner. He would take things to and from the office from the classroom, and he needed a peer to go with him. Otherwise, he would kind of wander around the school. And that was in the IEP. And that is great for Social Security to see, because they can see this was a job that he had every day at school, and this is the support that he needed to complete that job. It's also really important to collaborate with your therapists and your medical and your therapeutic team. So collaborate with your speech therapist, with the occupational therapist, with your developmental pediatrician. All of those medical reports and records are so important. Save everything and make sure everything is accurate. Sometimes when these young adults or these kids get a little bit older, like in high school, sometimes a vocational assessment, which is kind of you go somewhere and they do a bunch of questions about what jobs you might be good for. That can be targeted towards Social Security as well. So these are just other ideas that just make sure that Social Security has an accurate picture of who your son or daughter is when you apply. So that second prong is, besides having a disability, and I know I've said this a million times already, confirm that your child doesn't own more than $2,000 in assets in their names and won't in the future. 529s don't count because they are the beneficiary. That's in your names. But savings bonds, joint accounts too. So if it's an account with mom and dad, that still counts as your child's account. So just make sure, do an inventory. That's something you can do now as well. So here are a few action items, and I'll have these at the end too, but some things that you can do now. Register your child on the PUNS list. Review your current and most recent IEPs, and just make sure to keep everything. Keep a file. I mean, I have a file cabinet just because the IEPs are so thick at this point, but save everything. Gather the most recent assessments, save all the reports. I will say that this category of planning is often the most time consuming for catch up. So, and that's what I mean when we have parents come in and their children are a little older, like 26, 27, tracking down all of that testing and IEPs is very time consuming. And sometimes they have to get more testing and pay out of pocket. So this is really the time to make sure that you are prepared, you're organized, and just everything reflects exactly the support that your child gets each day. Okay. So the importance of a special needs trust. The next question is, so in order to qualify and maintain eligibility for benefits, your child can't own more than $2,000 in his or her name. How do I leave money for my child when I pass away? How do they receive an inheritance? How can I organize care and support for my child and plan around that $2,000 asset limit? That's where the special needs trust comes in. So really, the special needs trust has two purposes. One, it allows you to leave unlimited funds to that special needs trust. You can leave an inheritance for your child and it's not counted towards that $2,000 limit. It's also required for some pensions in Illinois. TRS, there's a wonderful death benefit for teachers that can be paid to disabled adult children, but it has to be paid to a special needs trust. So that's the number one thing. It protects those benefits that you've worked so hard to establish for your child. If they are receiving SSI and they're also receiving either home-based waiver funding or they're in housing, you don't want that to be interrupted by accidentally inheriting your child inheriting funds from you. The second really big piece of that special needs trust is the life plan piece for your child. Who will manage the money for your child? Who's going to provide guidance and care for your child? Who is going to support, for example, I'm assuming that my oldest daughter will be the one that's in charge and, taking care of my son and his money and things like that, but who's going to help her? I don't want her to be overwhelmed. So who's going to be on that team to make sure that she's not overwhelmed? Who's going to be involved in my family's plan? This is the one document that forms a circle of support around your child, and it can be a pretty difficult process. I'll be honest, I recently did mine for my own family. And it's just to think about that is hard, but I will tell you it does bring some peace of mind to have something in place, kind of a circle of support, again, of not just for your special needs child, but for your entire family. So roles in the special needs trust. The trustee is kind of like the CEO of the special needs trust. They are the decision maker. They manage the special needs trust for the benefit of the beneficiary. The trust advisory committee is probably my favorite role in the trust. These are individuals that know you well, know your family well, know your kids, and they support the trustee in making the best decisions for the beneficiary. So this is a great spot for cousins, nieces, nephews, people that know your family well and that you want to be involved in your child's care, but you don't necessarily want them to be responsible for making the decisions. We also have roles for an advocate and a care manager. An advocate is a benefits expert, making sure that those benefits remain intact. A care manager makes sure that any medical needs and medications remain on track. If they can make sure that all the health care and the care plan is appropriate. And then we have a trust protector, who is a person that can amend the special needs trust if changes need to be made after mom and dad have passed away and it becomes irrevocable. So the role of the trustee, like I said, it's the CEO of the trust. It's a big responsibility. A special needs trust is not a typical trust. A special needs trust goes on for the entire life of the beneficiary, because that beneficiary will likely be receiving housing or benefits ongoing. So they can't ever have more than $2,000 in their name. So this special needs trust will be going on for their lifetime. So that's why that role of trustee becomes really important. They are responsible for maintaining eligibility for benefits. They work with professionals to support the beneficiary. And that's why we've recently been telling families, it's great that you want a sibling to be in that role. I totally get it because they know their sibling really well. I think it's great to also give them the option of having a professional co-trustee help them, because there is a lot. And I think it's sometimes families are like, I don't even want to put the trustee on a sibling. I want a professional to be that successor trustee from day one. But it's just something to think about. And I think it's a really nice option to have, to get a professional involved if you feel like it might be too much for a family member. Like I said, the role of the trust advisory committee is like your circle of support. They can weigh in on significant decisions. They can contribute knowledge. They can serve as a sounding board. Um, Not just family members can be on this, but we've had clients have teachers, therapists, just people that you trust and that you want to be involved with your family after the two of you, after you have passed away. And then the role of the care manager or the advocate, these are professional roles. And these can be really helpful, especially if the beneficiary lives in a different town or in a different state as their family members or as the trustee. Care managers have become really popular lately, especially in Illinois. I had a trustee who's a sibling call me about 2 weeks ago, and she needed help in hiring a care manager for her brother who lived in Aurora in a house, and he had a personal support worker that would check in on him, but she was driving out there once a week and it was too much for her. She had her own job, she had her own kids, and so she wanted to hire a care manager to kind of make sure that nothing would fall through the cracks if she were to come out every month instead of every week. And I think it's great because a care manager can be used a lot, checking in on somebody 2 or 3 times a week, or a care manager can come in once a week and just make sure that groceries are stocked and everything like that. I just think it's a great role to provide the trustee some flexibility. And it's just an extra set of eyes on that beneficiary to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. A letter of intent is one of my favorite things to talk about because it's a very personal document. It is a personal, non-legal document that's written by you, by parents, to help others learn important personal information about your child. We counsel families to have this letter of intent and keep it with their special needs trust, because this is all the personal information about your child that cannot go into a legal document. This highlights their allergies, their medications, routines, medical care plans, sensory needs. We do an online clinic every year. It's usually in February, where we provide a couple templates for a letter of intent. I think it's a great thing to work on, kind of in your downtime. I've started one for my son, but I feel like it keeps changing and updating because obviously it changes as he gets older. But I have actually used it when we've gone out of town for a weekend and my parents have stayed with my kids. I've left the letter of intent for my son because it has all the important information in it. So I think it's a great document that you can even use now. And I think whenever something does happen and mom and dad pass away, to have that special needs trust and also have that very detailed letter of intent with all the personal information about your child is really helpful to the trustee. And finally, aligning your plan. So a special needs trust is great, but alone, it doesn't do anything unless it's connected to your estate plan. Meaning it has to be connected to your will or your trust. Your will cannot leave anything to your son or daughter with special needs. It has to go to the special needs trust. That special needs trust has to be referenced in your estate plan. Otherwise, your child will inherit directly and their benefits will be disrupted. So it's really important that your estate plan be comprehensive. You don't just do that special needs trust, that you make sure that special needs trust is connected to the rest of your estate plan, which typically consists of wills and trusts. All right, I'm going to move on to decision making. This is another area that doesn't come into play until your child does turn 18. I'm the attorney in our office that handles all of the guardianship matters. And I will say my biggest piece of advice here is have a plan prior to your child turning 18 because of this. So the day your child turns 18, they become an adult in the eyes of the state of Illinois. So there's a presumption of capability. So all adults are presumed to be capable of making decisions regarding daily living and to have capacity unless otherwise determined by a court. So how can you still help your child make decisions when he or she turns 18? And let me tell you, these medical facilities are very quick to cut off that my chart and cut off those parents from accessing medical records when these kids turn 18. So that's why I just say my biggest piece of advice here is have a plan. Know what you want to do a couple months prior to what they turn 18 so you're ready with what kind of tools, if any, that your child may need. So I like this chart here. It has the 3 different tools in Illinois that are used for decision making. On the left is the tool with the least parental involvement, and on the right is guardianship, which has the most parental involvement. The one we use the least is the one on the left, which is supported decision making. This is relatively new in Illinois. It was introduced in 2022, and I think it meant well, but we don't recommend it. It consists of a simple agreement between someone the principal, who's typically the young adult, and a trusted supporter, who's typically a parent or a sibling, but no one knows what it is. If you present it to a doctor or you present it to a bank trying to access a bank account, no one knows what it is. It's not well recognized yet, and I think it was well intentioned, but I just don't think it's there yet, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So the other tool that we recommend, which is people are very familiar with, is powers of attorney. Powers of attorney are simple legal documents where the individual appoints an agent, which is typically their parents, who can make decisions for them and continue to access their medical and healthcare records. The important thing is, while the agent, who is mom and dad typically, can make decisions for the individual still has full authority to make their own decisions. And if the individual suddenly doesn't want their parents involved or doesn't want them to make decisions anymore, they can revoke these powers of attorney at any time because they still have full capacity to make their own decisions. I think this can be a great tool if you can communicate really well with your son or daughter and you're not worried about their susceptibility to be taken advantage of. The tool with the most parental involvement is guardianship. And that is a court process where a judge makes a finding that the individual does not have capacity to make their own decisions. A good way to demonstrate the difference between powers of attorney and guardianship. So if the individual has, say, powers of attorney, where mom and dad are appointed as his agents, and then signs paperwork to open up a credit card and charges a bunch of items to that credit card, that individual is still 100% responsible for those charges because they had full capacity to make those charges, even though mom and dad were designated agents for a power of attorney. Now, if that same situation happened under a guardianship, those charges would be completely void because the individual does not have capacity to enter into that credit card agreement. So that's, I feel like, the biggest difference. I think powers of attorney can be great, especially if the young adult is still living at home and they communicate really well with mom and dad and you're looking more for access. For guardianship, it really happens if mom and dad are really worried that their son or daughter is going to be taken advantage of. I think the other thing to really be cognizant of is in order for a power of attorney to be the appropriate tool, the young adult has to generally have an idea of what they're signing. They have to kind of understand what a power of attorney is. If they don't have that understanding, it may not be the appropriate tool. So the next question I get is, how do I make that decision? How do I know which tool is the right tool for your child? So And I think this is a good thing to kind of, especially as your child maybe turns 13, 14, start to identify their strengths and limitations, meaning areas that they just need a little bit more support in making decisions. So a big one is managing and spending money. Do they count change? And I know, a lot of kids don't use cash anymore anyway, so that's not, but do they, when they give their card or when they give a dollar bill, do they expect change back? Do they give their card to friends? If their friends are saying, can you buy this for me? Do they do it? Medical decisions and treatment options, that's a big one. Do they take their medication? Are they able to understand what a doctor is telling them and able to ask appropriate questions? Do they know what to do in an emergency? Do they know to contact you? Do they know to call 911 or the police? Understanding impactful choices and consequences. I think this is a tough one too, because what 18-year-old understands impactful choices and consequences, not great at it. But this is a big one that goes to capacity. So when I said, in order for a power of attorney to be valid, the person has to have a general understanding of what they're signing, something similar to that. Another big one is driving. So under a full guardianship, an individual can't have a driver's license. So I always like to ask families that come in, does your son or daughter have a license, or do they have any interest in driving or taking driver's ed? If they do, you don't want to have a full guardianship. There are other ways to still have the protections of a guardianship, but still be able to drive. We've done a lot of limited guardianships lately, which is the young adult can make some decisions, but other decisions they don't have capacity for, and mom and dad can make those decisions. But that's a nice way to make sure that they're still able to get a driver's license. And finally, the big one, are they vulnerable to exploitation? This is the one I feel like that I worry about the most. I feel like a lot of families come in and they say, my son or daughter will do anything for friends. And I feel that one too. Will they give their money away? Will they pay for things for people? Will they go in and go sign something because somebody tells them to? That's a big one as well. When to decide. So 17 and younger, just kind of wait and see. Look at those areas where your son or daughter may need some extra help in making decisions. We recommend making a decision by about 17 and a half, just because for powers of attorney, you can get those prepared, or for guardianship, you can start that court process right when they turn 18. If there's no decision made at 18, you won't have access to their health care or their financial records, and they're pretty strict on that. And then, if something, there's been a few cases where something has happened where there's been an ambulance and mom wasn't allowed in the ambulance. It's all fine until something happens, and that's when you need something in place. In terms of timing, powers of attorney are simple legal documents. So a week before they turn 18, you can get those prepared, and then they can sign when they turn 18. It just needs proper notarization and witnessing. Guardianship is a court process, and it takes 2 to 3 months. You can't file for guardianship until they turn 18, but the physician's report, the paperwork, that can be prepared prior to that date. So when they turn 18, we file the petition, and then the court process starts. Once that court process starts, depends on the county, but usually about 2 to 3 months. Okay, my favorite part, the action items. It's almost like homework. Okay, and I'll have the next slide has different action items based on your child's age too, which I think is great. So the first one, where are you in your current plan and your child's age to best determine the priority of your next steps? And I'll show you that on the next slide. Number 2, register for the PUNS list. This is really an easy thing to do now when you have all of the information you need in front of you. This is a big one. Organize and keep track of all those IEPs, those reports, those professional reports. Have a filing system. Keep everything, and just make sure that your IEPs are very well developed and paint an accurate picture. Focus on the therapies, on services, and keep everything. You can write your child's care plan and the letter of intent. Like I said, this can be used now. I've used it now. I'll have a link to our newsletter, which will announce our letter of intent clinic. And I'm happy to give you some templates for that as well. Begin asset planning now. So ensure your child doesn't have more than $2,000 in his or her name. Now is the time to do it because you have plenty of time to fix it. Um, Here on this slide is action items based on the age of your child. And I do think this is great because, as you can see, when you get towards the teen years and adulthood reaching age 18, there's a lot thrown at parents. There is the guardianship, there's applying for benefits, there's possible transition programs, IEP meetings, enrolling in Medicaid, preparing applications. So the more you can do now, or just kind of have it as in your mind now and kind of have a roadmap, the less overwhelmed you're going to feel as your child gets older. Um, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice for early childhood and the teen years is just make sure those IEPs reflect where your child is in terms of supports. And just stay below, make sure your child doesn't have more than $2,000 in their name at any time. Um, I will say too, there's a lot of great social and sports and other activities for kids that are in that early childhood and teen years. Our newsletter highlights some of those too, and I'm sure Bluebird and Merlin Eyes Landing has a ton of those as well. So those are great in terms of social for the kids as well. This is just everything that we cover in our special needs planning law practice. And then plenty of time for questions. And then I'm just going to leave this slide here because that has our newsletter thing right here. And then my email is here if you want to contact me. But let me see if I can figure out the chat. Let's see.
And I could help that with you.
Do you mind?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry,
no.
I don't see it. Okay.
Here, let's see. Luciana wants to know, so if her child or their child has more than 2K, what can they do? Change the money to their bank account? How should they do that? Is there another way to hold it for them?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the age. If they're younger, then yeah, I mean, younger than I would say than let's see, younger than 13, yes, you can just move it to or spend it down or move it to mom and dad's account. If they are over the age of 15, you want to do it in an appropriate way. An ABLE account can be a great tool for parents that may want to move money for their child and keep it for their child, but not have it count towards that $2,000 asset limitation. An ABLE account is a great tool through the state of Illinois. And right now you can put $19,000 a year in this account and it doesn't count towards that $2,000 asset limitation. I believe next year they're raising the limit to $20,000 per year, which is great. If you go on illinoisable.com, you can open that bank account up online. And it's a great tool, especially it's actually really great too when these kids do turn 18 and they start receiving SSI. And if they're receiving that $967 per month, maybe they're also working part-time. So each month you're really quickly hitting that $2,000. So what a lot of parents have done is opened up an ABLE account for their son or daughter and moved money into the ABLE account. Because like I said, $19,000 a year, you can deposit in there and it's not counted towards that $2,000 asset limitation. There is, and I should say too, it's $19,000 a year. I believe 20,000 starting next year, up to $100,000 max. You cannot go over $100,000. And you can spend it on any qualified disability expense. And if you go on the website, illinoisable.com, there is nothing that is not included as a qualified disability expense. So it's great. It's a very flexible way for your child to have money in their own name.
For two children with disabilities, one ABLE account and special needs trust should suffice, or each kid needs their own?
So for the ABLE account, each child would need their own. You have to put it in the name of, it has to be for one child who has special needs. Special needs trusts, you can do a joint special needs trust. We've done quite a few of those. We've done family special needs and usually joint ones for siblings. That can absolutely be done. They don't need their own. They can have their own, but they don't need to.
I have a question.
Or, oh, sure.
You mentioned that SSI has a 3-year look back period in terms of assets.
Mhm.
If a child has more than that within that 3-year period and creates a special needs trust, would that solve the problem?
So if the child has more than $2,000 in their name, it kind of depends on the amount. If it's not that much over $2,000, then it would essentially be SSI would hold the payment until that money has been paid back, essentially. But if it's a lot of money in their name in that period, I would either recommend an ABLE account, or if it's even more money than that, first party special needs trust. And that's a different type of trust than the one I'm talking about. That first party special needs trust is for the child's own assets, which is a whole other seminar, but there are different tools that you can use. It kind of just depends on the amount, when it happened. Um, but if you email me, I'm happy to email you back based on your own circumstances as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
For the ABLE account, when can they use that money?
They can use that money right away. It's a regular checking account. It has a debit card. I believe only one parent can be, mom or dad can be on it. But it's great. It's like a typical checking account.
Wonderful. Lori wants to know, can your firm help a family gets SSI for 6-year-old to help pay for therapies and insurance now for high needs 6-year-old?
So we do not do SSI applications. If she would like to email me, I do have a few referrals that we work with that I'm happy to give some names, but we don't do those types of applications. I will say that's the other great part about our firm is we make it our mission to network and be able to be a resource for families in terms of when they come in here. If we can't do it, we know somebody that can do it, and we know that they do a really good job. That's why we network a lot with professional trustees, because people seem to be needing that. And that's a big one. You want a professional trustee that really knows what they're doing. Different therapists, different day programs. We really want to be able to give families what they're looking for, even if we don't do it. So please, yeah, I'm happy to give that recommendation as well if you email me.
Yeah, and just another question about that. Do you have recommendations for a professional trustee? We are having a hard
Yes,
time finding one. And that's from
email me. Yes, because
Ashley.
yeah, I can't tell you how important that is. If you're looking for professional trustee for a special needs trust, it's not your typical trust. And we've had, we have lunch and learns here at our office where we invite professional trustees to come in and tell us what they do, and we very quickly figure out ones that know what they're doing with special needs trust and ones that they don't. So I'm not going to say them recommendations here right
Right,
now, but if you want to email me, I'm happy to give you. We have 3 or 4 that I would highly recommend in
that's
the
great.
area.
I'm gonna put your email in the for adults on SSDI Medicare, attending community college and working part-time, how is the total month of earnings different than the SSI of 2K?
So SSDI does not have an asset limitation. There is a certain amount that they can't go over in terms of their own earnings. In terms of Medicare, that does not have an asset limitation either, but Medicaid does. And usually people that are on SSDI and Medicare are also on Medicaid. So I would just be cautious on that one, because Medicaid is the one that has those long-term supports and housing, and that has that asset limitation.
Joanne has a question. I'm hoping that my soon-to-be 16-year-old can get a part-time job. She does not have the stamina for full-time work. Will this be a drawback when she's 18 and applies for SSI?
No, I think a part-time job would be great. I mean, and that'll show I think knowing how she will do in some kind of work environment is wonderful, and also it's really important too, if she does work part-time, make sure that you provide what type of supports she may be receiving in that job, because sometimes they may need a little extra instruction or a little extra time, something like that. That will not hurt her SSI application at all. Now, if she goes to work full time for 40 hours a week, yes, but I think working part-time and seeing how that goes, I think that's great. Because, I will say, as a parent, I would love for my son to find a job and do something that he loves on a full-time basis and not, not need these government benefits for the rest of his life. But I love having a backup plan. So it's a difficult balance because you want your child to go out and try something and find something that they love, and hopefully a very understanding boss that knows, that the different supports that they need. But you also want to be prepared in the event that it doesn't work out. So I think trying a part-time job is great.
Jana has a question. For a power of attorney, can we go to the courthouse and have this completed? Can a parent handle this directly?
So not at the courthouse. The courthouse, the guardianship is the court process. Powers of attorney are just legal documents. Most of the clients we have us prepare them just because there's different requirements for notaries and witnessing and things like that. Some parents try to handle it on their own. They're legal documents. It's totally up to you. But no, you don't do it at the courthouse.
Couple more messages. Does the state look at how much she earned or how much she has under her name for the 20K limit for Medicaid's SSI?
Well, for Medicaid and SSI, they both have a $2,000 asset limitation, but the ABLE account funds, if that's what you mean by the 20,000, is not counted towards that limit if the funds are held in an ABLE account. It's not 20,000 yet, just to be clear, it's 19,000 right now, but no, that is not counted towards that $2,000 asset limitation.
So Jennifer had a question. Hi, my son is visually impaired with autism. Would he be able to get more benefits?
I can't answer that without looking. Before we have people come in for a consultation, we're able to review all the IEPs and testing and things like that. It's just impossible to know without looking at all of those documents. I'm sorry, I'm not sure, possibly.
If a parent can't work because their child has a lot of maladaptive behaviors, can they be their child caregiver before age of 18 and get paid?
I believe there is a way. That is not something that I am familiar with or that we handle. Trying to think if I have somebody that I can refer her to. Email me. I think one of the people that does our benefit, or that does a lot of benefits for us, may be able to answer that for you.
Is there a maximum amount of money that can be in an ABLE account? Would it be okay to put 10K a year in the account and use it as a savings account until my son turns 18?
So there is a maximum of $100,000 in there. And so you could put $10,000 a year in there. I would caution, and I don't want to get too in the weeds here. There is it's called a clawback on the ABLE account. So if something were to happen to your son or daughter, and there is money left in that account, it would likely go to the state of Illinois if they've had any benefits. If they're on Medicaid or SSI, if there's any balance remaining, and they pass away, you can't designate a beneficiary to that account. It would go to the state, if they've used Medicaid benefits. So I like to caution parents, it is a great tool, especially to avoid hitting that $2,000, but you don't want to stick a ton of money in there, if that makes sense. It would almost be better just to have an account that's designated for your son or daughter and then naming the special needs trust as a beneficiary. I would just worry about that clawback myself in the event something were to happen.
Do you have recommended housing for adults that have strong strengths to live alone with weekly support?
We do a lot of.
She visited Western Bridges, was not a good fit and expensive per month.
Yeah, I've visited there too. I think it's a beautiful facility. It is expensive. We've toured there. There's a few places that we've toured. It really depends on the funding that you have. If you have Medicaid, if you're pulled from the PUNS list, and once you're pulled, your option, it's kind of the openings that people have. If she has certain questions, I know we've visited quite a few. And I do know that some are, depending on the support needs, some are better fits than others. But if you have any questions about specific housing, please email me.
Charlene wants to know, so the attorney fee to open the special needs trust is $10,000?
No, the attorney fee?
That's what she is.
Oh,
No. So
no.
the attorney fee to open the special need trust is
Oh,
10,000.
no, I mean, that's not our fee. Our fees completely depend on, the different situations, different cases, and there's different types of special needs trusts. Some are part of a will, which is kind of like a placeholder. Some are individual standalone special needs trust, but that's not our cost to open up a special needs trust.
How does one designate a special needs trust as a beneficiary rather than the children? I know, excuse me, rather than my children. I know some relatives have them as beneficiaries, for example.
Mhm. Yeah, so in your will, really, instead of your son or daughter's name, you'd want to put the, if your son's name is Tom Smith, you would want to put the Tom Smith Special Needs Trust, or whatever the name of your special needs trust is, you would replace Tom's name with that trust. Some families have a family trust and they have everything going to the family trust, and then the family trust allocates it to the special needs trust. It just depends on how your plan is designed. But the most simple answer is, instead of your son's name, you want to put the name of his special needs trust.
And we'll do one more question. If we wish to have our special needs children inherit our home, how would that work if Social Security says no assets over 2,000?
So there's a way to do that. Some families, if they want to leave their home split between their children, we can do something called the transfer on death instrument, where we have a form and we designate, one half to Claire and one half to Tom's third party special needs trust. And then we record that in the county where the house is located. And then after parents pass away, that's how the house is allocated. And as long as it's left to the special needs trust, it's not in Tom's name.
I think that was it.
Yeah, and like I said, if anyone has other questions, I'm happy to respond via email. I know I throw a lot of information out there and I sometimes talk fast because I just want to get all the information out there. But if you have follow-up questions, please email me. I'm happy to respond.
Thank you so much, Kate. And we thank everyone for participating. And we will send out the recording so everyone could review it again. And of course, reach out to Kate for more information and for your.
I'll put my email in the chat really quick, just
You know,
so
I
they
actually did already, Kate.
Oh, no, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. But thank you all, and thank you, Kate, so much for joining us. And I would love to have the information about when you do yours so we could send it out to everyone too.
Of course, yes, I'll absolutely send it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much.